those ones. It's almost Valentine's Day. Is anyone excited? Oh, yeah. Ooh, you can sense the anxiety when I said that in the room rise. You could cut it with a knife. Is anyone anxious about Valentine's Day? Does anyone hate Valentine's Day? Okay, yeah, some real passion. Not a lot of passion across the board, just a lot of kind of apathy, a little bit of tension. But I get it. Valentine's Day is one of those things. It's one of those things that we probably would prefer if it didn't happen, because especially if you're single, because it's just kind of this expectation that you don't have full control over, right? Like, it's expected that you get an oil change on your car, but you can just go do that or get someone to do that. But you have to put yourself out there for Valentine's Day. And someone asks you, well, do you have a date for Valentine's Day? You're like, I don't have a date for any day of the year. Like, why is it this day? Why is it that February 14th has to have these extreme expectations? It's too much pressure, and people generally just have had enough of it. But you know what? People will really try to put in the extra work. Listen, ladies, and maybe some guys, we got what? Like 10 days till Valentine's Day? You can expect some DMs from people you've never met. Maybe you've met them once at the project. Maybe you bumped into them literally one time in the cafe, and that was enough to make the list. And it's probably a list of names that have received the same copy and paste message. That will happen. That does happen. And it usually doesn't work. It doesn't work. So guys, try harder. Speak in person. Make eye contact. Those are the basics. That's a start, and that one's for free. But I want to tell you about one of the funniest and most horrific examples of trying to ask someone out on a date, because that's the worst, right? Like the first step. Once you kind of got in the door, then you can kind of play it out, feel it out. But that first request, that first time where it's like the relationship is literally non-existent. Maybe you've talked a few times. Maybe you're reading into, man, she looked at me one time. Maybe she liked my messages, liked my stories on Instagram like 6 times out of the last 575, because I counted and I've been looking and doing statistics on that because I'm that type of person. I've heard this from people. I didn't ever think that was a thing, but I guess it is. But listen, this story probably tops all. A friend of mine, someone I know personally, he messaged a girl and said, hey, name not included, was wondering if you would like to go with me to the movie Jurassic World. Dates it a little bit, right? To which she said to this guy, no, that's okay. I think it's better if we don't. Because, right, that's an awkward thing. You don't want to go, it's not going to happen, but one side isn't fully aware that's not going to happen, and you have to navigate that. To which he responded, well, no, like we could go and we could, yeah, like it would be fun. Like I'll take you for ice cream too. And she said, no, you know what? I don't think so. Like we'll just stay friends. And one more try. Like, you know, you got to strike out 3 times. You can't just give up. You can't give up on love. Just keep pushing. Said, well, what if we went and I got you ice cream and pizza? What if we did that as well? To which, of course, the response was, no, you know what? I think it'd be better. So he's feeling a little heartbroken, maybe a little like just his ego's taking a little bit of a hit. So trying to save face and legitimately just trying to show that he's not desperate, because no one wants to appear desperate. His response was, okay, that's fine. I wasn't that desperate anyways. Punctuation and wording matters, friends. It matters in all situations, and it mattered in that one. Of course, he wasn't trying to sound ruthless and mean and somewhat confusing, but it came across not that great. And when I saw this message, I laughed until I cried. But I could see how it would have been received with a little bit of pain and a little bit of... Actually, the girl who received it laughed about it pretty good and understood. But let's just say, if you're going to be going into DMs, if you're going to be asking people out for Valentine's Day, let's make sure you know them a little bit first, and let's make sure that you don't tell them you're not that desperate anyways if they say maybe next time. But first dates are the worst. They are. Like, we've all probably been on a bad first date because, like, what do you wear? There's so many unknowns. What are they going to wear? Where do we go? Do we do coffee, or do we just go to a movie? Because when you go to a movie, you're just sitting next to each other. You're not even engaging. You're not even talking. You're just watching something beside each other. maybe that's safe, I don't know, but you don't get to know them that well. Should we do that? Should we go for coffee? Because then it's just front-facing the whole way, and it's just the only thing between me and a horrifically awkward conversation is a cup of coffee, and that's going to be gone soon. And then it's just me and another human learning all my deepest, darkest secrets, which you shouldn't share on the first date anyways, but that's another story. Have you been on one? They're weird. And I found a couple on the internet that are pretty stinking weird, and we're going to look at those. Be up on the screen here. The first one, we went for coffee, and afterwards he drove me to his grandparents' house where they were sleeping. He woke them up to introduce me to them. I don't recommend that. Probably didn't lead to a second date. Let's look at the second one. Didn't know the guy's actual name because his friend did the intro, and he was in my phone as Fire Island Guy. It was too late to ask. He ordered spicy Japanese food he couldn't handle. Drank my water, drank his water, and asked for milk in between, telling me he practiced writing rap music in his parents' basement. The spicy food gave him diarrhea. He was gone from the table for 15 minutes. He went to kiss me at the end of the night after he had gone back into the restaurant for the bathroom. Again, I turned my head, and he kissed the inside of my ear. It was awful. Almost makes you feel like you just want to meet someone's grandparents after that one. Third one. I met a guy at the bar I was working at during college. He asked me out, and I said yes. On the night of our date, I ended up picking him up. He got in the car with some other guy, and they both got in. I hope it's okay that I brought my cousin. All right, let's look at another one. He ranted about his ex for over half an hour, then played me Kanye West. Hopefully it was college dropout. One more, I think. And finally, he introduced me to his ex who still lived with him. None of those are good options. None of them are acceptable. First dates are a bit of a risk. Romance is a risk. Love is a risk. Let's be honest, though. There's nothing more amazing than meeting somebody new, a new opportunity, the excitement of what could be, of what is developing and what is happening. You got asked out, or you got somebody who has said yes to asking you out. You have the potential of this new romantic partner. There's the messages, there's flirting, there's all that jazz. It's just all new, all exciting. It's all opportunity. But then you remember the risk. Then you remember that this isn't all just safe. You'll have to tell this person about your life. You're going to have to hear about their lives. You tell them about your life, and what if they don't like your life? What if they look at you and they're like, ooh, this person's weird? What if they tell you some weird stuff? What if they take you to their grandma's house and wake them up to introduce you? What if they get diarrhea after spicy Japanese food? What if they don't like your past? What if they don't like your story? What if it scares them? What if your burdens, what if your weaknesses are too much? What if they have a past and you're scared to push through? There's a lot of vulnerability that comes. All of a sudden, the risk is great. And sure, there is so much potential at the same time. This person who you're having your first date with could be the future mother or father of your children, your soulmate, your twin flame. But it also could be that new stalker who rummages through your garbage looking for used, hair from your brush. There's no in between there. It has to be one or the other. Love is risky. Love is a little dangerous, but love is amazing, and we all want that deeply. All we want as humans is to feel loved, is to feel respected, to feel like we can be vulnerable with somebody and that we can be accepted in spite of all of our many flaws, that somebody is still there and loves us and wants to be with us, and all the other people that are available in the whole world, that you could have anyone and anything, but that person chooses you and only you and says, I only need you. We desperately want to feel loved. We want to give love. Love is amazing, and it's worth chasing. But relationships are scary. And I get it. You have to be vulnerable, and you have to be honest. You have to open up parts of yourself that you maybe haven't really even opened up to yourself about. And there's a level of potential hurt. The deeper in you go, the more risk you take. And the more you open up, the more vulnerable and the more potential there is for you to be hurt. The deeper you go into a relationship, the more pain that could be available on the other side of that relationship going poorly. The first date's the best time for it to fall apart. The second date, second best time. Every day after that, every date, every moment gets you deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's not an excuse. That's not me telling you not to go deep or to be surface level. I'm just saying I understand that relationships are vulnerable and scary because there's the potential for pain and there's the potential that you have to expose parts of yourself to somebody and trust somebody. And we often do get hurt. Have you ever been hurt in a relationship? Have you ever experienced pain like you never thought you could before? Abuse, selfishness, childishness, cheating, all these different things that can just wrench our hearts, that can break us inside, and that leave us feeling like, man, maybe there's no one for me. Maybe I'm not lovable. Maybe there's nobody that will ever truly look at me and say, I choose you. In spite of all of it, I choose you. Maybe things just plain old didn't work out. You thought that you were going to get married to this person. You thought that that engagement ring was just around the corner, just till Valentine's Day. But then they called it off. It just isn't working out. It's not you. It's me. Sure. And we become hypervigilant, we become hurt, we go on guard, and the next time we say, we're not going to make the same mistakes, because there were those red flags, right? There were those things that we saw right at the beginning, but man, they were so hot. Was there anything else? Or they just were there and they said the right things. There's all these things. But we saw these red flags, but we were blinded just by the intensity of that new relationship, the words that were spoken, the physicality. There's something there that we just ignored those things. We said, I will never make that mistake again. We've all probably been there. If you've been through a relationship that breaks apart, if you've been dumped or had to dump somebody or something went wrong, we've all been, yeah, I saw that at the beginning. Has that been you? Maybe that's you now. You're starting to see those things in a new relationship, and you're like, I've seen this before, but have you seen this person? Have you, I'm so into this, and I don't ever want to be alone again, and my loneliness scares me, and I see these red flags, and I don't know if I should end it and be alone, or just maybe push through. Maybe it's just insecurity. I don't know. But maybe you're looking through and you're remembering, you're saying, I promised myself I'm smarter, I'm going to be wiser, and now I am, and maybe I'm ready to mingle. So tonight we're kicking off our new relationship series. It is Valentine's Day month. As Pastor Abby said earlier to us, it was the Singles Awareness Month, which I think is a great term for it. Judging by the awkwardness when we talked about it, that may be more the tone of this room than celebrating Valentine's Day itself. But we're talking about our series, The Ick. And it's kind of a newer Gen Z term. I'm a millennial, so it's newer to me. I'm learning. I learned recently what an ick list is. Let me tell you, that was an experience to learn what a room full of girls in their early 20s had for an ick list. I heard many. He was mean to his dog. Maybe the dog wasn't nice. You thought of that? Nice dogs get treated nice. She talked about her coworkers all the time. He wore jeans in the summer. He literally never wore shorts. That was a real one. That one really stuck with me, let me tell you. I was like, do I wear jeans in the summer? I don't think so. That seems uncomfortable. She talks down to children. Maybe the children weren't nice. He refused to apologize literally ever. Wow. If you want to date anybody from that side, make sure you say sorry. That is just start out with, hi, my name is, and I'm sorry. He listens to Joe Rogan. He doesn't listen to enough Joe Rogan. It's very confusing. She wears Ugg boots. He posts more pictures on his Instagram than I do. Let me tell you, friends, not always, but that's a red flag. We have no shortage of examples of what we don't want in a partner. A potential future spouse, of what we don't want to see, what we've experienced and we don't want to experience again. But I would like to pose a thought to you, throw out a question to you. Maybe we focus too much on what we don't want. Maybe we're so focused on red flags that we never see the green ones, that we don't actually spend any time identifying what we need. I never want that again, but never, this is what I want in the future. I will never go back to that, but this is what I need to chase, and this is what I need in my life. It becomes about the deficit and not about the surplus. It becomes about the past and not about the future. And we end up running away from something instead of running to something greater. There's this verse in the book of 1 Corinthians, Pastor Paul. It's in the second half of the Bible called the New Testament, and he had planted this church, this guy named Paul, and he's telling this church in this letter, he's kind of connecting with them and giving them some advice and some correction. And we see in this verse in chapter 13, it's a pretty common verse. You'll hear it at weddings all the time. It's actually about the application of spiritual gifts. But it's about love, and that all these things need to be done under the umbrella through the lens of love. And so we can apply that to any circumstance, not just spiritual gifts. We can see this as a great example of what love is. And like I referenced earlier, we are all seeking love. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. These are the true characteristics of love. If you're looking for someone to love you, if you're looking to love somebody, these are the things that we need to try to find and to achieve in our own lives. Patience, kindness, honor, selflessness, forgiveness, honesty, protection, trusting, hopeful, and resilience. Put that in your dating profile and see what happens. Apparently, if you're under 6'2", you might have some trouble still, but that's beside the point. Or if you like running. Still don't quite get that one. I enjoy long walks on the beach and a warm cup of coffee, and by the way, I am patient, kind, honoring, selfless, peaceful, loving, forgiving, honest, protective, trusting, hopeful, and I'm also resilient. You might get a few messages. Actually, if you write that, you probably get no messages, but that's beside the point as well. This is a perfect person to be with. If you could find that person, and I'm not saying that person exists as it is, as it's written, but if you could find that across the board, you have found the perfect person. Who wouldn't want a partner like that? Who wouldn't want a boyfriend like that? Who wouldn't want a girlfriend who exemplifies that? Ladies, if you friend zone this guy, then you are a fool. Unless he wears pit vipers. Then I understand. Also, that guy kind of looks like Post Malone, but also an Alberta version. Like if Post Malone played at the Big Valley Jamboree, that's what he'd wear. This is your guy. This is your girl. This is what you're looking for. This reflects the ideal partner, but it reflects so much more than that. This reflects the character and the heart of Jesus, of God, who loves you. And who loved you and gave the ultimate example of love, of sacrifice, of selflessness, of all these things. He is the ultimate example. When we look at the Bible and we look at his character and how he exuded all these things in every circumstance, in every situation in his life. This is the standard. This is captured again in a book that Paul wrote to the Philippian church. We just finished going through this series in Philippians. See, in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3-8, it says this: "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another," sorry, I lost my mic, guys. "In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature with God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. That is the standard. That, in addition to 1 Corinthians, is the standard. Jesus put himself second when he didn't have to. He did nothing out of selfish ambition. He did nothing out of conceit, but he chose humility. He looked to others as better than himself. He put himself as the second when he didn't have to. That's the spouse you want. That's the partner you want. And listen, your spouse is going to make mistakes. Your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend is going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. They will not always be this. They will not always be 1 Corinthians. They will not always be Philippians 2. They're going to make mistakes, but what you need to be looking for is somebody who exemplifies this more often than they don't. And when they do miss the mark, they notice it, they recognize it, and they can say, I'm sorry. Girls in the front. And I'm going to realign with that. I'm going to try and find myself. I'm going to continue to pursue the character that Jesus showed and try and continue to chase the character that Jesus lived out in my own life. And I'm going to serve the way that he served his church. I'm going to serve you as my girlfriend, as my boyfriend, as my fiance, and eventually as a spouse, the same way Jesus did. Because Jesus was humble. Jesus was selfless. Jesus died for his church. He died for the people he loved. He put his life second. He did that for you. He did that for me. That's the ultimate act of service, the ultimate act of love. And of course, that is the ultimate green flag. There's a verse in Ephesians that we're going to take a look at. In chapter 5, verses 25 to 27, it says, Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. This is a part of a series of verses that talks about this together equal standard of serving each other between a husband and a wife. And of course, that is what relationships are aiming to find out. If you're going on a first date, you don't need to put pressure on yourself. Date, and this is just my opinion, date. Go date people. Learn what you want. Learn what you don't want. See what's out there. But if you get to the point where you realize and you're like, yeah, this person could never be my spouse, don't keep going. Because the deeper you go, like we talked about, the deeper you go into that, the more vulnerable you have to be. And if you know it's not going to end well, why are you digging deeper and deeper into it? Why are you making yourself more vulnerable when you know that that space, that level of vulnerability for somebody else belongs to somebody else down the road? And maybe you haven't met that person, or maybe you friend-zoned him, but he's wearing pit vipers, and you need to move back towards that person and just give him a fashion tip. But don't go running towards a dead end that you know exists. Sometimes we're scared to we don't want to be lonely. Sometimes to sit in this imperfect relationship where we know we're not compatible, but at least then, I have the social status. People will think, well, if someone finds me attractive, at least I'll feel attractive. At least I'll feel a little bit happy. At least I'll get that hit of dopamine when I get a text message. At least I'll feel like I'm somebody, because I always thought that no one would ever love me because of the insecurities in my life. Or maybe you just find it more comfortable and it doesn't have all these layers behind it. But either way, if you know that a relationship isn't going anywhere, don't continue. You're just opening yourself up to more pain. You're opening other people up to more pain. At the end of the day, we need to find a spouse, a partner for life. You want to find that person who has all these qualities, all these green flags, because they'll probably, if you want to and if it works out down the road, be a parent with you. And that's so important. And yes, looks matter, attraction does matter, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how hot you are now. It doesn't matter how hot the other person is. At some point, we're all going to be 90, and ain't no one hot at 90. You might be attracted to your spouse at 90, but objectively, by social standards, the way you're feeling right now goes downhill a bit. So let's not get so caught up in that side of things that we don't realize that there's going to be a lot of life beyond that where that doesn't matter, where that isn't the most important thing. There's so much more to relationships. Find someone who loves you and treats you with respect and serves you the way that Jesus loved and served his church, who puts their lives on the line, who gives up their own comfort, who walks with humility and puts their lives to the side and their hopes and their comforts to the side like Jesus did. Find that, and that is your green flag. So yeah, you want to find a date who's kind to the waiter, who's kind to animals and children, and who does not exclusively wear jeans in the summer months. But you need to find that person who exemplifies the character and the traits of Jesus more often than not, who chooses love in all its forms, who shows those character traits over and over again, even when they're not expected to. But even then, if you find that person, this is going to be controversial. You might still not be ready to date. You might not be ready. You might not be able to. You found that person. They're right in front of you. You might have even dropped into your DMs and asked you out for February 14th coming up. Because while it's important to find these traits in other people, that's important. It's even more important to discover them and to find them in yourself. Because we can always see the red flags in everyone else. But the truth is that there's probably red flags in our own lives that we haven't even looked at. Blind spots. Perhaps it's you who's actually covered in red flags. And sure, maybe you're not abusive, maybe you're not a cheater, maybe you're not a bad person, but you're missing a lot of what we talked about here. You don't exemplify this to the point where you're ready to share that with someone else. You maybe are quick to anger, you're a little vindictive when you're spiteful. You judge quickly. You hold grudges. You just know that there's these things that keep coming up that you know you should be dealing with, but there's still a problem. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect to be in a relationship, because then you'll just be single the rest of your life. No one's perfect. Ask anybody who's ever been married. They're not like, oh yeah, my husband's perfect. Never heard that once from anyone or from a wife. There's always something wrong. There's always warts, but I'm talking about those red flags in your own life where you'd be like, I'm not there. So what are the red flags in your life? When you go through those lists, when you go through 1 Corinthians 13, when you go through Philippians 4, when we go through these things, Philippians 2, and we see these lists of things that we need to exemplify and emulate that Jesus gave us in order to love and truly love someone else, what are the things that you're missing? What are the things not just, oh, I'm missing them, so I'm never lovable, I can never be happy, but what are the things that you need to start to pray to God and spend time with God and refine into your life and start to build the habits of choosing those things over and over again. When you're angry and you're quick to get angry at somebody, that you turn to God and you say, okay, I want peace in this situation. I don't want to fly off the handle. If you're somebody who isn't humble, you're working on your ego, you need to center yourself as somebody who understands that your value comes from God and not from your success and your achievements. That you find these areas where there's a deficit of connection between those things in your life and be honest with yourself and say, Holy Spirit, refine me, change me. Number one, because I want to be a better follower of you, but also because one day I want to share myself and share my life and be a great spouse to other people. Or one other person, I should say. Don't misquote that. We all have red flags that the Holy Spirit needs to expose in our lives. And we need to ask Jesus to help us refine those things into green flags. You can't always control what someone else brings to a relationship, but you can always control who you are and what you bring. But it's a lot harder to bring that into the relationship once you've started. You can. Anyone who's dating here or married here, you can still chase these things, chase them together, talk about them together, pray as boyfriend, girlfriend, as couples together, as spouses together, read the Bible together, seek Jesus together. But it is so much easier to build that up in your life when you're independent and single, to be the person and become the person you're called to be when you're not having to be relied on by someone else. Chase that now, and it will make your future relationships infinitely stronger and infinitely better. Chase that with everything you have. So how do we do that? There's a verse in Psalms 139, and in verses 23 to 34, it says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me, and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offense way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Search my thoughts, search my heart. Search me, God. Know me and my anxious thoughts, and if there is anything offensive in me, if there's anything that is depravity in me, if there's anything wretched in me, if there's anything broken in me, if there's anything in my life that misaligns with who you would call me to be as a follower of you, Jesus, as someone who is a child of God, if there's anything in me that needs to be changed that is going to keep me from you, please search me, show it to me. The blind spots in my own heart and my own life that I don't even know are there, I'm open, and I want you to show those to me. Convict me of them. Not convict as in convicted of something, some crime, but put conviction on my heart, put motivation on my heart that this is not the best and I need to be more than this, and I can be more than this, and I'm called to be more than this. Primarily because you are called to be a follower of Jesus. You are called to serve the King of Kings. You are called to be a Christian. You are called to make the best decision of your life, to follow Jesus, to acknowledge him as God, that he died on the cross for your sins, he rose from the grave, and because of that, you can have everlasting life. You can live for eternity and in abundance, in fullness here on earth as well. But beyond that, in this context, so that you can be the best husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner that you could ever be. Your ceiling to love another person will always be limited by your love for Jesus or lack thereof. By the depth of your pursuit for Christ, that will always be the ceiling of how much you can love someone else, how much you can serve someone else, how much you can be like Jesus. Because if you don't know Jesus, you can't be Jesus to someone else. And we're called to love our spouse as Christ loved the church. Before you can love somebody, you have to love yourself enough to be everything you can be for yourself between you and God. Don't just change who you are for someone else. Don't just put on a show. Yeah, you want to dress the best you can. You want to have a shower before you go on your first date. You want to present yourself the best you can. But don't create a false facade and have the outside of you have the best clothes, the best cologne, the best perfume, the best hair, all these things, and then have a rotten, wretched inside of you that you're ignoring and not dealing with, because that will expose itself down the road. Every one of us has something to work on. No matter what's happened to us in the past in relationships, no matter what we've experienced, we all can be better. But it's not some sinister motive to trick, I want to be the best Christian I can ever be so I can trick this person into dating. No! I want to be as much like Jesus as I can be, because that's going to bring value to my life. That's going to give me hope in all situations beyond relationships. And it's going to change my life and everyone's life that I come into contact with. It's going to give me hope when there is none. It's going to give me light when there's only darkness. It is the most life-changing, beneficial, game-changing way you can live your life. And if you haven't done that yet, you're missing out, and you need Jesus in your life. You need it. You need him. And the good news is that that's available. But with relationships, you need that, because that's all that will get you through. When things get hard, that's all that will get you through. You need something more than just looks. You need something more than just feelings and that you like the same music. You need God. You need Jesus in your heart working between both of you, fixing the things in your own hearts independently, and then together refining you into a couple, into partners that chase after him together through all stages of life. Before you can be vulnerable with another person, you need to be vulnerable with God. And I would actually say, before you can love somebody else, you should be content with who you are single. You should be confident in who you are with God, that your identity comes from him and not from the relationship that you have eventually or that you're seeking. That you get to the point where you can say, I'm okay on my own. And it's going to take someone pretty stinking special to take me away from where I'm at, from my independence. Not like some cringy, I'm a lone wolf, I don't need nobody stuff. Like, that's weird. I'm talking about somebody, and you're lying to yourself. Those are the most desperate to chase relationships people I've ever met. But somebody who says, I don't need someone else, I would love it. But I have enough, and I am enough, because Christ in me is enough. And once you hit that point, that's when you can start to share yourself with someone else. That's when it changes everything. That's where you have the hope and the confidence, and when you're content in your life, that's when you can start to share with other people. But you can't get that from a relationship book. You can't get that from a radio call-in show or a podcast. That comes in confidence and being content because Christ is in you, and you only get that by chasing after Jesus with everything, independently, bringing it into a relationship. So as the band plays, I encourage you, not as some act of like self-loathing, but self-assessment. Ask the Holy Spirit. Ask Jesus. Say, search me, O God. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Know all of me. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me to the way everlasting. Expose the red flags. What do I need to work on in my relationship, or just in my relationship with you, Jesus? And he'll show you those things. And he'll say, this is what's got to change. But I love you anyways. Let's work on those things, because it will make you better. But even now, I still love you and you're valuable. And Jesus will begin to work in those things and refine those things. And I promise, whether you're single this Valentine's Day, or whether you're getting engaged this Valentine's Day, or you're in a marriage right now, you will be better. You will feel full. You will feel content. And you will have everything, all the hope you ever need. So if you can, let's stand together. If you need prayer today, if you have anything you need to pray about, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's something else, or you got illness, or you have someone in your life you need to pray for, we're going to have a prayer team up at the front, and you can come up and pray with them. If you need prayer, do not leave this space here today without getting prayed for. But let's worship together.